If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the masquerade. In this episode, we are going to go through everything you need to know in order to create your own hunter in Hunters Hunted 2 for Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, or V20 as the elders call it these days. Before we properly sink our teeth into tonight's episode, I wish to tell you what you will need in order to follow along with me to make your first hunter in Hunters Hunted 2. First and foremost, you'll need a copy of the Hunters Hunted 2 core book, either as a physical or a PDF copy if you are a weirdo or allergic to books or something. If you are playing the game old school with the archaic devices known as pen and paper, you may have a friend, or two, who's willing to lend you their copy, but as more and more hunters are seeking the likes of Discord and Roll20 to play, it is highly unlikely someone will just lend you a copy of their book from afar. It is also highly encouraged for you to purchase the Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition core book, for it provides a fuller variety of merits, flaws, backgrounds and the like. I am going to presume that if you are here, you know a fair amount about Vampire the Masquerade and have a basic understanding of some, if not all, the clan mechanics and how they work. You may have seen some online chronicles such as LA by Night, Chicago by Night by the Near Dark Studios people, ATL by Night by the ATL by Night folks, or played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which in turn led you here, or other online chronicles which in turn led you here anyway. If, however, this is your first venture into the world of darkness, and you just fancy playing as some mortal hunters wanting to hunt some vampires and not care for the lore of Vampire the Masquerade, that is totally fine. The Hunters Hunted 2 book leans into the less is more approach to the extent that it's imperative for achieving maximum impact on the players. Fear of the unknown is the driving force behind this game/supplement. Once you have the core book and any other source book you want, you'll need a character sheet. Drive-Thru RPG doesn't easily provide PDF copies, but I will be using the mrgon.rocksolidshells.com interactive sheets, but there are others available should you wish to use a different format. With the preparation shenanigans biting the dust, one can now begin to create their Hunters Hunted 2 character. There is no system or dice roll to be made when determining your character stats, unless you really want to, of course. The Hunters Hunted 2 book uses the storyteller system, which encourages players to become one with their character, to embrace them, as it were. Vampire pun aside, the Hunters Hunted 2 has players assume the role of mostly ordinary mortals who pursue the passion of vampire hunting. What drew your character into the world of darkness? What are they looking for? What are the answers they are hoping to get, and what would stop them from investigating any more? How would your character explain their supernatural experiences? Through faith, spirituality, or science? Chances are, it is not their entire life. They probably have a job, friends, family, and hobbies outside of the destruction of vampires. What sort of person are they in life? What do they do? How do they go about doing it? These are just some of the questions you should be asking yourself to help you get into the shoes of your vampire hunter. Such questions will help you fill out most of the boxes at the top of your character sheet. Name is your character's name, whether it's their actual name or a pseudonym. Player is your name, and if you're struggling with that, just write Fishmouth in there. I promise you, it won't upset anyone. Chronicle is the name of the story you will be playing in. Concept defines your character's notions, occupation, and potential role within the group. Age is how old your character is. Sex defines their gender or lack of one, and it is the sacred duty of the storyteller and players to respect these choices religiously. Residence is not really explained here, so I'm assuming this would be whatever the name of your group is, which also serves as the Chronicle's themes. As for my example character, Aria was once a carefree child. Most are, as the only thing they have to worry about is getting their homework done and what are they having for tea. Aria never knew poverty, the pains of hunger, yet her life was remarkably hollow. She was blissfully unaware of how privileged she was and how mummy and daddy managed to have so many nice things, was always able to provide what their precious little girl wanted, when she wanted, with their blood money. The 6-year-old girl had no idea her parents had deeply troubling connections to a crime family known as the Giovanni. Then, on that one fateful night, hitmen broke into Aria's precious family home where she saw what the Giovanni truly were, all from the dangerous safety at the bottom of the wardrobe. She witnessed them being beaten, tortured, and God knows what else. Truly horrified at these monsters, she was too frightened to scream. Most of them, the Giovanni, got away, but some were lambasted by a barrage of bullets, their brain matter spewing in all possible directions. They, the Giovanni, were dealt with by a secret organization called Her Majesty's Agents, who found this shivering child whose hair had turned whiter than snow. The agents saw an opportunity to raise the child as one of their own, creating a new breed of hunter for their cause, performing tests that have given her new experimental pyrokinesis. Now, 20 years on from her parents' demise, she is known as Requiem, one of the most feared and callous of the hunters, as she exists solely for the destruction of vampires and anyone who chooses to serve them. There are 2 boxes remaining at the top of the sheet for you to fill out. Nature and demeanor are very similar in definition, but are very different in how one would use them, for they define you and your character and how they interact with the world. Demeanor is how you choose to present your child to the world, whilst nature is how they truly are. To use an extremely crass example, you may seem like the nicest person in the world in the public eye, but deep down, you are a deranged psychopath who eats babies for breakfast without the smallest amount of remorse. But going back to the character creation process, both nature and demeanor splinter off into many different archetypes, each one providing different ways for players to regain willpower, a finite resource a player may use in a tricky situation. There are lots to choose from, so I will let you discover those by yourself. But to add this information to Aria or Requiem to her fellow agents, she has been raised by the agents to hunt and kill kindred, and indeed any mortals that would ally themselves with them. She is definitely a soldier, so I think that would best fit her demeanor. She regains a point of willpower when she achieves the Order's objectives. However, due to her traumatic experiences and perhaps her training and upbringing with the agents, she has next to no regard for life as a whole. Aria does not gain any pleasure in killing or torturing, she just sees her bloody tactics and techniques as a means to an end. Whilst perhaps not the best fit, I feel the poorly named sociopath archetype is the closest to Aria's true nature. She regains a willpower point whenever she is the greatest contributor to a body count after everything has settled down. Now that you've established some lore regarding your character, you should have an idea what sort of person they are when you assign points into your attributes. How do they solve their problems? Fighting, thinking, or talking? How do they naturally interact with the world? The attribute section is made up of 3 categories: physical, mental, and social. You start by assigning 1 point in all attributes. You then distribute 6 to a primary attribute, 4 to a secondary attribute, and 3 to a tertiary group. If you decide to put 4 points in a particular attribute, you could choose to assign a specialty to it. However, it is stated that storytellers can use the standard 7-5-3 spread to allow players to be on a more even footing with vampires, which I'm going to do here because fuck it, why not? Anyway, Aria is a killing machine who has to keep her wits about her. She does not need to talk unless she has to, and it is only really for intimidating vampires and their ghouls. So it makes sense for me that physical is the primary attribute, mental is the secondary attribute, and social is the tertiary group. Aria's strength is a total of 3, dexterity is 4, and stamina is 3. Charisma is 1, manipulation is 3, and appearance is 2. And with the mental attributes, perception is 3, intelligence is 2, and wits is 3. Dice rolls in World of Darkness games are usually made up of 1 attribute plus an ability, as there are many ways of demonstrating feats of strength and intelligence unless you're wanting to deadlift a donkey, for example, as that would be pure strength by my reckoning at least. The skills are divided into, from left to right, talents, skills, and knowledges. Similarly to attributes, abilities are prioritized in primary, secondary, and tertiary groups, with no skill getting more than 3 points at this point. That said, any dots that are 4 or higher later down the line can have a specialty assigned to it. For example, if your character was an iPad expert and was attempting to repair their mate's iPad, you would gain an additional die when repairing it. On the topic of specialties, if you put any points in crafts, performance, or technology, you have to assign a specialty to it, which would add 1 dice to any roll where said specialty would apply. The primary group gets 13 points, the secondary group gets 9 points, and the tertiary group gets 5 points. The distribution of points will reflect Arya's prowess in combat, her natural survivor's instinct, and her awkwardness in social situations, in addition to her intimidation tactics, to put it nicely. Starting with the talents, Arya's alertness is 3, her athletics is 2, her awareness is 3, her brawl is 2, and her intimidation is 3. For skills, she has 1 point in drive, 2 points in firearms, 3 points in melee, 1 point in stealth, and 2 points in survival. And with knowledges, she has a dot in computer, 2 dots in investigation, and 1 dot in medicine and occult. Next is the advantages section, which is where the character creation process truly becomes unique. We shall ignore Numina for now and look at backgrounds, for which you have 5 points to spend. These should support the character concepts. A homeless hunter is unlikely to have a lot of cash, for example. Hunters Hunted 2 does provide some new backgrounds, which may not be appropriate for some chronicles and characters. Likewise, not all backgrounds from Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition are applicable, for they are kindred only, such as Black Hand membership. For the time being, I shall put all 5 points into alternate identity, as very few know Arya's real name. I may add some background later in the process via the expenditure or freebie points. Following this is the virtues section, which provides the moral backbone for characters, how far they will go for understanding, and how well they can keep their composure in the face of danger. Conscience governs a character's sense of right and wrong. Self-control is how they maintain their composure, and courage determines their gumption. You start with 1 point in the 3 options, and then add 7 additional dots amongst the virtues as you see fit, but be careful, as they determine your character's humanity and willpower. Your humanity is conscience plus self-control, and your willpower is the same as your courage points. Regarding Arya, I have decided to give her 5 points in courage. She has 4 points in self-control and 1 point in conscience. This means her starting humanity is 5, and she has 5 willpower points. We have almost finished creating your first Hunters Hunted 2 hunter. The last thing that needs to be done is to spend your 21 freebie points on whatever you want, including the purchasing of Numina, if you think it is appropriate for your character to really have those powers. Background and willpower costs 1 point. Humanity, virtue, and ability costs 2 points. Attributes cost 5 points, and Numina costs 7 points. These numbers change when you spend experience points at the end of each session. However, the Hunters Hunted 2 book does not provide what those numbers are, so I am assuming that is relying on the storyteller to revert to Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition for said stat increases. Regardless of which system you use for the expenditure of said points, to increase in Numina, the first dot costs 10 points. Thereafter, it is the current rating times 7. There is also the option of buying merits and flaws that make your character all the more unique. Merits grant you special advantages that make you stand out from the rest of the hunters in your game. Flaws are the exact opposite and are worth adding to your character sheet. After all, no one is perfect. Each merit has its own point expenditure, and flaw adds a certain number of freebie points you could spend. You can purchase as many merits as you can afford, but you can't have more than 7 points of flaws. For the sake of simplicity, I will stick to the newer merits and flaws presented in Hunters Hunted 2. So what have we done with Arya? Well, I've given her an additional point in firearms, taking that total up to 3. She has 2 dots in pyrokinesis. She has the flaw, black and white, and the merit, clear-sighted. And I've also given her 3 dots of willpower, taking that new total up to 8. Once you have finished adding those freebie points and deciding on those merits and flaws, you can finally say that you've made your first Hunters Hunted 2 hunter. Yes, the book has all that you need to understand the character creation process, but I have found that it sometimes helps to have someone walk you through the process, rather than nag your storyteller 100 times. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.